Hi, everyone. This is Natalie Pace. And again, thank you for joining me today. I'm going to be interviewing Nick Finding. Today is September 1st, 2022, and Nick is the chairman of JV Energen, which was the first biomethane gas to grid UK anaerobic digestion plant in the United Kingdom. We're going to be asking all kinds of questions, but how and why did they come to be the first? How difficult was that? And even how they have increased their reach. Lots to unpack with Nick, and he is a wealth of wisdom. We're blessed to have him. We'll get started momentarily. Hi, Nick. I must say, I'm just delighted to get your wisdom today on how others can clean the grid and have local partnerships, all of the wonderful things that you've done. But I want to start with being the first. Like, what is that process like, and what gave you the confidence that this was the way to go with anaerobic digestion?
Well, being the first, I guess, was okay on the basis that I wasn't alone. That we were doing it with as a joint venture with my farming partners and the Duchy of Cornwall, most importantly, and realistically, well, in the first place, we went to do electric only, and that many people had done that before us. And so it was only about 10 days before we were about to pay for the electric generation machines that somebody came along with the idea, why don't you just clean the gas and put it straight into the gas grid? And that's the point at which it became more nerve-wracking. And a problem with that is when you start doing something, when you pioneer something like that, most of the problems you get are problems that not only you haven't seen before, but the people who make the technology haven't, because the technology had never been used in the world before. So yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Now, okay, so you talk about the farmers and the Duchy coming together, and I think that's what's interesting here too, is that when we talk about cleaning the grid or we talk about clean energy, a lot of times we're not talking about how far we have to truck the feedstock or truck whatever energy source we're bringing it in. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I mean, that's part of the magic too, I believe, in your project.
Well, certainly the relationship with farmers is extremely important. Not only to ensure we have enough and a good quality feedstock, but the process means that 85% of what goes in comes back out again. And so that we have to make sure we can make good use of on farms around us as a fertilizer and soil conditioner.
Yeah.
That's the first focus. And gosh, I forgot the last part of the question. Sorry. What was the last part of the question you asked?
Well, I was talking about the local, how the feedstock is so local and how
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we average about 7 miles for all our feedstock out and feedstock in rather than digestate out. And when you look at, I mean, so we did actually look at making pellets out of wood fiber, pellets out of straw and rake mill and things like that first. But when you look at the audit trail of a boat that comes from America or Alaska or somewhere, or lorries that come from Scotland or and things like that, it makes it more difficult to be make people believe you're sustainable.
Yeah, because your carbon footprint has to include all that transportation, right? And that's such a huge piece of the equation. So
as an example, before we chose maize, which we grow for feedstock to be our main feedstock, we used to grow as a break crop in an arable rotation. We used to grow Aussie rape, and that used to go from us to Erith on the east of England to Germany to be crushed for biodiesel, which is about 40% as efficient as putting maize through a digester to create energy, and never mind the audit trail, from here to Germany. So it's bad.
Yeah, so this is great because but I also see how, making this choice and then moving forward and you keep course correcting here, right? Like you were even talking to me about how you guys have expanded your reach, increased your megawatts, all of that
Mm.
sort of things. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, so we always wanted to make sure we got the most out of the technology we had, and being first at that job, it took a while to get used to the 134 alarms and all the other things that it threw at us. And then we started to believe sustainability is key to this, and what we wanted to do was make sure we can make good use of all the byproducts. So one of the first things we did, other than using digestate to displace fertilizer, to digestate to displace artificial fertilizer, imported fertilizer. So that all goes on to the next crops that we grow.
Right.
We decided that we try and sell the dry digestate we produce as a soil enricher for gardeners, and we weren't entirely sure how that would work because you're competing in quite a tough market. But anyway, we created a brand and we invested in a bagging plant, and we're now in over 400 garden centres across the UK, all the way up through to Scotland, selling a product called Blooming Amazing. And we've had such fun doing it. We found it a hugely popular product. So that goes from strength to strength. And COVID obviously made that a massive boost. It gave that a massive boost because everybody went in their gardens. And then about 2 years ago, we part of the process of cleaning the gas. So we digest the feedstock, and half the gas is half the biogas is methane, about half, and the other half is CO2. And so we used to clean that, and sadly we had to vent it, but there's no more CO2 than would normally be produced. We decided we would capture that and see if we could find a market for it. And so we set up a company called Biocarbonics, and we captured the CO2, but don't forget this is reusing as opposed to recycling, because as soon as somebody's taken, because we sell it to the food and drink industry, to brewers and cider makers, and as soon as they take the top of the bottle, the CO2 is gone again. So, but it's a great story. It's reusing it, or lifting. No, but anyway, it is reusing it, and it's a great business. And of course now, with all the ammonia plants who normally provide most of the CO2 in the UK, struggling because of the cost of gas. And they produce the majority of the CO2, so they're either closing down or putting off producing ammonia, and as a result, we've had a massive influx of interest and orders we can't compete with.
Wow, that's
Mm.
a great success story. And let's talk about also like how many homes you actually are able to power. And again, this is people are using your gas for cooking and for heating. Am I correct on that?
Right. Yeah. 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 So it's
So
for
for
heat. It's for heat
yeah,
rather than power. And
yeah.
essentially, when we started, we were producing enough for about 4,430. No, sorry, about 4,500 houses
Hmm.
in winter, and 56,000 houses in summer. And now with the upgrades and everything else we've invested in, we're producing enough for 7,500 houses in winter, and over 100,000 houses in summer. So Poundbury is about 2,000 houses. Dorchester is 20,000 houses. So we certainly look after those all the way up through to April probably, and then it goes miles all the way out to sort of Lyme Regis and beyond, and Benetton that way. Yeah. Mm.
Fantastic. So, are there any future plans that you're on the path for with this JV Energen and your now three products that you've got?
Mm. Um, well, we probably reached the maximum amount of gas output that we can produce on the tank sizes that we have, and it's quite a small site, so it's more difficult to expand. And we're in an area of outstanding natural beauty, so that was difficult enough to get planning in the first place.
Yeah.
But we are looking at things like heat usage and anything from battery storage to whatever. One of the things we have tried is to find a product that will a plastic product that will biodegrade properly to use on our bagging plant, because at the moment His Royal Highness and all the Duchy of Cornwall are very keen for that to happen, as they are with everything else we do. We have tried, but it's not working at the moment. A lot of other people tried before us, and we're still trying to find the product will work.
Yeah, so burlap gunny sacks don't work for your blooming amazing, eh?
Well, exactly, yes.
Um, okay, so is there anything else that you want to tell us about, clean energy, methane to grid, anaerobic digestion, anything at all about what you're doing?
No, I think we're following trends. Where obviously gas I mean, we're producing green gas, and it's in great need at the moment, and we're able to keep the thing going to help that. The CO2, I think, if we can, the problem with CO2 production is at the moment they only accept CO2 from crop feedstocks, because of the perception that if we were to use food waste AD plants to try and get the CO2 from, there's a marketing perception that bubbles from muck isn't going to sell very well. So
Right.
the reality is that the specification of CO2 is the same as it would be from us. And so we're hoping that this sort of hiccup at the moment with supply will allow more people who are buying CO2 to realize that it can come from anywhere. And if that happens, then biocarbonics can expand more quickly and serve more people, and hopefully help resolve the UK issue of supply.
Yeah, and that reminds me, because I remember when you first opened up, I believe in 2012, if I'm not
That's
mistaken.
it, yeah, October
And
2012.
you Yeah, and there were some clever little things about people eating chocolate and saying, "Oh, yes, we're gonna put all of our food waste," but that was one of the discoveries you had, right? Let's talk about the transition from normal food waste from households into
Mm.
what you're now doing from the farmers and the feedstocks.
Yes. Well, we started off. I mean, the business plan model was set around because I'm a farmer, a second generation Duchy of Cornwall farming tenant, and my partners are all historic farmers, and so growing crops as break crops was the obvious thing to do. But certainly the Duchy of Cornwall and His Royal Highness are all very keen to use waste if we can. The issue has been, we tried it for about 2 years. The issue was that not only was there a large amount of plastic contamination, because the plastic they don't get rid of it. It just gets mashed into tiny, small 2 millimeter amounts. So the more you use, the more you see it, and it's going out into the land anyway. So there was that. There was the fact that you never knew what went into the food waste. So it could be a reject load of fruit, or it could be a reject load of burgers. Anything could happen. So the variability of the gas output was very poor, and then the logistics of getting lorries in was never to be relied on. So all in all, we went back to the more simple way of producing gas 24/7, and we're 100% green gas going into the grid 24/7.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, we talk about your future plans and all this, but it is probably a nonstop job. I mean, we all know that farmers work extremely hard. So I want to talk, kind of pull us away from clean energy for just a moment. For those people out there that are starting new projects, I mean, basically, I was looking at your bio, and although you have decades deep in farming, JV Energen looked to be your first foray into energy. So can you talk about that a little bit, about the professional route and the courage you took to jump into that role?
You may have a longer, you may need a bit longer for that one. I've been very lucky to be able to surround myself with people who I can give responsibility to. So I've never never found it difficult to delegate, and a lot of people might find that the first problem is that you know, if you're going to pursue a new venture, you've got to give it 100% at the time, and whatever your core business is, if you're not careful, you're going to lose sight of it, unless the people that you leave in charge of it you know can be responsible for it.
Yeah.
So I was very lucky there. Very lucky to have the partners I've had who are focused on the same goal and sustainability and can do people. I mean, a lot of the people we were working with at the time, you know, maybe network people or whomever, they were almost intent on slowing us down. And so we were all can-do people and had a great sort of joint venture mentality. And in the end, a lot of the people that we found difficult to start with, we turned around and they believed in it as much as we did. And by the time we actually injected into the grid, you know, everybody was up all night making sure it would work. So, you know, nothing comes easy. You have to, because even after that, you know, you've then got 2 years of, if you're pioneering something, you've got at least 2 years of learning how the hell it's going to work.
Right.
You know, so it's not for the faint-hearted, put it that way.
Yes, lots of hard work.
Mm.
Good. All right. Well, I'll give you the last word. And again, I can't thank you enough, because I think that your success story there involves so many things: courage, tenacity, wisdom, probably a lot of data driven before you even came to the solution of anaerobic digestion. And it's something that other communities even, right? Because this was a community driven
No, for
project.
sure. No, in fact, we were approached by a community project in Bruton, I think, that wanted to,
Mhm.
you know, bring in the restaurant food, the school food, and everything else as part of their project. I mean, interestingly, the issue to some extent is, you know, when we're talking about AD plants now that are expected to have waste as part of their feedstock
Mhm.
to get the grants they need to do to get this job to work. You know, a lot of people are reviewing their waste and reducing their waste dramatically, which is a good thing.
Right.
But, you know, it's then whether there's enough waste to actually be included in any project. So yeah, we're lucky
Yeah.
we're out of that one, but yeah, for now.
For now, and you'll share that wisdom with others. So again, thank you so much, Nick. I really appreciate your
Well,
time.
thank you, Natalie, for allowing me to. Well, I mean, in the first place, allow me to meet you, and it's always been a great experience, and to be part of your book, 8 million. Remind me, 8 million. What is it?
8 billion. The power of 8 billion.
8 billion.
It's
So the
up to
power of
us.
8 billion. Sorry, I should have had that off pat. And to be part of that book as well was fantastic. You know, when you put us against what goes on in other parts of the world, we seem quite small and insignificant. But thank you for that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I mean, I don't want to toot, the book's horn, but it was 20 years of research, and it's all just featuring people like you. I mean, I'm as proud of putting you in, or putting in even Compton Community Garden. It's a food desert, gang-ridden area in South Central,
Yeah, it's
and
amazing. Yes.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing what
Mm,
communities and people can
mm,
do when they come together, and that's what I
mm,
love. Those are the
mm.
stories I love the most.
Well, thank you again. That's very kind. Anyway,
Thank you. Okay, au revoir.
say bye for now.
Okay.
Yeah. Are we off? Or
I'm gonna hang on one second.